Did I just hear that you're interested in starting powerlifting? Well then, here, have this. The man card. You've earned it. For realsies, I wish it was that easy to get into powerlifting. Well, technically it is, but being good at powerlifting is vastly different than just participating in powerlifting. You see, a lot of people, when they first start powerlifting, myself included, just go to the gym and max out their big 3 lifts every time they go to the gym. They max out their squat one day, they max out their bench another day, they max out their deadlift another day, rinse, repeat, sprinkle in some accessory work for a little bit of flavor, and then just go and go and go. But that's not how you get good at powerlifting. And if you're just getting into powerlifting, you probably don't want to be wasting your time trying to figure out, is this the right program for me? Does this program work? What's the best program for beginners? That's where I come in. And here we are, and I'm going to give you what the absolute best program for beginner powerlifters is. Stay tuned. Now, it's a fact that any repetitive motion is considered exercise, but this isn't CrossFit, this is powerlifting. We actually have some sort of a schema associated with what we do whenever we go to the gym, and that is a program. A powerlifting program is going to tell you what to do in a smart manner, kind of like that time you busted out a diagram and actually made your girl climax for the first time. And today, we are talking about the powerlifting program 531. 531 is a powerlifting program designed by Mr. Jim Wendler back in 2008. It is touted as the first powerlifting program to get popularized due to the invention of the internet. Yes, there was a time before the internet existed, and powerlifting is older than it. If you are a scholar of the sport and you actually care about the labels that 531 has, it is a block periodized program that used linear progression and progressive overload in order to increase your maxes, increase your performances, and get you stronger, bigger, and better at powerlifting as long as you follow the program. There are 2 advanced concepts included in 531 that I want to talk about and give you guys a little bit of context before we dive into what the program is. And that is AMRAPs and deloads and training maxes. So actually 3. An AMRAP stands for as many reps as possible. Now, you can go with the flow with that and think, AMRAP, I'm going to be going until failure. No, you do not want to go to failure when you're performing an AMRAP. You want to get every single rep that you do. But AMRAP, it doesn't sound as sexy as AMGRAP, which means as many good reps as possible. So when you're performing an AMRAP, you want to get as good quality reps as possible because eventually your form is going to break down because you'll have muscular fatigue buildup intraset, and your benches, your squats, your deadlifts are going to start to look a little uglier as you go through, as you get closer and closer to failure. That's the point where you want to stop your AMRAP because you don't want to build and develop bad habits with your lifts. The next advanced topic that you want to kind of understand is the idea of a training max. When you max out at a competition, in a powerlifting competition, assuming you've peaked correctly, or if you are at a better fatigue ratio, which means you have less fatigue in your system, you're well rested, and you've given your body enough fuel, basically primed yourself for a peak performance, you're not going to be able to lift as heavy on every regular day as you would be on that perfect day. So a training max takes a percentage of your peak maximal condition, lifts, and it kind of scales things back as if you're going to do things kind of differently and you're not going to be able to perform at a peak optimal level every single day. So you scale things back and use what's called a training max. And training max for 531 is 85% or 90%, depending on which block you're in. And the last advanced concept I'm going to give you guys is the concept of a deload. A deload means that you have a downward undulation in your volume and intensity that allows your body to recover and rest. Because you're going to be putting yourself through stressful situations by putting and loading up weights on a bar. You want to give your body a little bit of time to rest after a block or a period of time where you're going balls to the walls in your training. So a deload can look like a 5x1 at 50%. That's not very taxing on your system. Or it could be a 5x3 at 50%, or any sort of tweak to that, as long as you're not stressing your system out and accumulating fatigue, allowing your body to rest and recover in a week span. And that is your deload. All right, now we're at the bread and butter of this video. So bust out your notebooks, write this shit down, or do what I would prefer you would do, and just watch this video on repeat so I get extra ad revenue. But here's 531 written out, and I'm going to explain every little tidbit that's going to help you get along. So it's got 6 weeks before a deload. So week 7 is a deload. That's when you're going to get more rest and more recovered so that you can repeat this and progress that way. So first 3 weeks, you're going to use an 85% training max. So you take whatever your 1 rep max is, because I know you have maxed out in the gym at some point, whatever that is, no matter how ugly it is or anything, or if you've gone to a powerlifting competition and you've actually competed, that PR or whatever you hit on the platform trumps whatever happens in the gym, because you've got those competition standards going on there. So take the heaviest number you've ever lifted, whether it be in the gym or on the platform. If you've hit something on the platform, use that instead of whatever you've hit in the gym, and take 85% of that. And all of these numbers that I'm going to be talking about today, take 85% of that top number, and then take whatever percentage from that number you got from your training max. So week one is where you're going to kick off this 531 progression. So the way that it goes is it swells almost like a pyramid. So you've got one set of 5 at 65%, then you add 10%, one set of 5 at 75%, and then this is where you start to get into the little fancy schmancy of the program. You've got a 1x5 plus at 85%. That means you're going to do an AMRAP, which means get as many good reps as possible. So leave 1 to 2 reps in the tank for form's sake. Once your form starts to break down and starts to look ugly, or you risk failing a rep on a set, put the bar back. You're done. You're done. It's safer for you, and you don't want to develop those bad habits that I talked about before. And then you start the downward side of the pyramid. So 1x5 at 75%, and then you finish off with a 1x5 plus, another AMRAP at 65%. So if you notice, you've got an AMRAP at 85%. At your top set, the heaviest set you're doing a 1x5. At the heaviest set you're doing an AMRAP at 85%, which is the heaviest you're lifting this week. And then on your way back down, the last set you do before you leave is another AMRAP at 65%. So sets 3 and set 5 are both AMRAPs. It's a lot of volume, and you're going to get through this training day a lot faster than other type of program. It's designed for people to get in and out of the gym real fast. And then you finish off with whatever accessories you feel are necessary. So take whatever your weakness is, your weakest muscle group, and really target and hit that to try and grow and develop it so it's not your weak point anymore. Week 2 is the exact same thing as week 1, except you add 5%. And you're doing sets of 3 instead of sets of 5. So week 2 is a 1x3 at 70%, 1x3 at 80%, and a 1x3 plus, an AMRAP, once again, at 90%. And then you start the downward undulation, 1x3 at 80%, and then you finish off with another AMRAP, 1x3 plus, at 70%. So week 2 is week 1, except with 5% increases to the percentages you're using, not the training max, but the percentage of the training max that you're using. And instead of doing sets of 5, you're doing sets of 3. And then week 3 is a little bit different. It's where the 531 comes from. Also, the week kind of structure is where the 531 comes in, because week 1, 5, week 2, 3, and then week 3, you work up to a 1 by doing a 531 progression. So week 3, first set you're doing, after you've warmed up, of course, 1x5 at 75%, you add 10%, 1x3 at 85%, and then you add 10%, and you do a AMRAP at 95%. A 1x3 1 plus at 95%. And then you've got the back downs again, 1 by 3 at 85%. And then you're finishing off with another AMRAP, a 1 by 5 plus at 75%. So you've still got these 2 AMRAPs going on, even on this 3rd week. And then you do your accessories. So every single week, you're doing your accessories, you're targeting your weak muscle groups, and you're making sure that they become stronger. If it's your back, you should definitely do a back movement. Every single day, you should do a back movement. You should do an ab movement every other day. If your grip sucks on deadlifts, work on your grip. If you think your biceps could use some work on your biceps. The whole goal of going to the gym and powerlifting is to have fun in the gym. So whichever accessories you feel are not only going to be more beneficial to you, but also are going to keep you going to the gym and keep your enjoyment in the gym at a high, that's going to be the best accessory for you. So you've gone through 3 weeks and you've done the 5-3-1 progression. We aren't at the deload yet. We're not at week 7 yet. So we get into a new block, kind of a semi-block. So you take this 85% training max after you've done 3 weeks and you change it to 90%. So your training max, instead of being 85% and then basing all the percentages off of 85%, you're basing all of your numbers, all these percents, off of 90%. So you've added 5% to your training max. And then you do the same progression and you repeat weeks 1 through 3 with the new training max. So 1 by 5, 65% of 90%, 5%. 1 by 5, 75% of 90% instead of 85%. 1 by 5 plus at 85% of 90%. And I'm just going to assume you guys are smart enough to put 2 and 2 together, that week 4 through 6 is the same as week 1 through 3, but with a different training max. And then you deload. You don't take a new PR at all in this block, but it guarantees that you progress. If you are getting on these 1 by 1s at 90%, you're getting over 2 or 3 reps. You can start to play around with this training max, not too much, and you fall into this progressive overload, a linear progression, because that's what this program is based on. Once you hit over 3 reps on these 1 by 1s at 95%, add either 5 pounds to your training max, depending on how your numbers are specifically, or add 5%. So your week 1 through 3 would be at 95% of your training max, and your weeks 4 through 6 would be at 95% of your training, of your max. Your training max would be 95%. So that's how this program progresses. You might get to a point where you're using 100% as your training max. If you are a competitive powerlifter and your goal is to compete, absolutely, at this point, you should be competing because you've got those competition standards. You're at the safest environment that you could possibly be in with however many spotters and loaders they've got. It's an ideal scenario for you to hit new numbers, new PRs, to reset your training maxes. Because at the end of the day, your first meet, it might be your last meet. You might decide that you don't want to compete anymore. But if you do decide you want to compete, every single meet going forward is resetting your training maxes so that you can go back through, and then the numbers that you want to hit end up being your new training maxes because you actually worked and progressed towards hitting those numbers. So meet 1, you're basing things off of what your gym training maxes are. So you go through that, you compete, you get the standards going, you get more experienced in the competition setting of powerlifting, and then you update your training maxes based on what you hit on the platform. Meet 2, hopefully you hit PRs. You got new training maxes. Meet 3, new PRs, new training maxes. And you can see how this kind of snowballs into you being stronger and stronger. At this point, you're probably thinking, wow, I could progress infinitely with this program. And unfortunately, that is not true. I said that this program, this 5-3-1 program, is the absolute best program for beginner powerlifting because there's a phenomenon known as Newbie Game, where you can almost go home, masturbate 3 times to tranny porn. It's 2024, we don't judge here, and put 5 pounds on your bench max. You can squat with a broomstick, 15 reps, maybe twice a week, and you can add 5 pounds to your squat max. It seems like almost anything you do is going to add to your maxes when you're in this phase of newbie gains, but you're eventually going to hit what's called a plateau. And a plateau means that you're fighting and you're starting to not really hit PRs at powerlifting competitions, and your strength has kind of leveled off. You're not adapting as well, and it's getting a little bit harder. You're getting more and more experienced, and your body is more at the human limits and getting beyond human limits, idealized, than biologically we should be at. So you hit a strength, because we as humans, we're supposed to only hit a certain amount of weight. No one's ever supposed to squat 1,000 pounds. Biologically, that makes no sense. But we can tweak, we can force our body to adapt to new stimuli in new ways so that we can progress further. Now, those programs utilize numbers like 45% of a training max. Those programs utilize things like 8 by 15 by 2 of 65%. That those different ways of training are not going to be as beneficial for you as a beginner until you are more experienced in the sport of powerlifting, until you've hit that plateau. Because a lot of the science and research surrounding the methodology of powerlifting program is based off of people who have already hit that plateaued section. Now, why is 531 the best powerlifting program for beginners? It's because linear progression for that progressive overload. You're getting to a point where you can probably take your training maxes and rep it out for 2 to 3 reps in an ideal scenario. You're getting those newbie gains, and you're doing it in a smart way. If you go to the gym like I did when I first started powerlifting, and you max out every single time, you are at a high risk of injury, and injuries really suck. This powerlifting program and the ideas around powerlifting programming is to make sure that you guarantee progression without risking injury. So by following 531 as a beginner, you're guaranteeing that you are getting the best possible progress based on the factors of being a new powerlifter. You're gonna be able to progress through this program pretty fast until you hit a plateau. And that is why this program is so good for beginner powerlifters, because it's basically built for you to have those PRs week after week after week. Because every single week, the idea is you cycle through the program a bunch of times, you hit new PRs every single time, and your strength is progressing every single time you cycle through the program. So you progress, you get stronger, you compete, you reset your numbers, you rinse and repeat over and over again until you hit that plateau. And then once you've done that, you upgrade from being a beginner powerlifter to being an intermediate powerlifter. And then there's one more level, which is a little bit more metaphysical, when you go from being an intermediate powerlifter to an advanced powerlifter. But that's a whole different video that I'll cover after I've gone through a bunch of the advanced powerlifter. Once I've gone through a lot of the intermediate powerlifter programs that I'm going to share with you. And the thing with powerlifting programs, that's a catch-22. And I'm going to leave you with this. Everything works. That's the problem with it. Everything works. You can go to the gym, PR every single time you go in. That's going to slow down. You're going to plateau a lot faster than if you go about it smartly. And you're going to get injured a lot more frequently. So going to the gym and getting stronger. You lift heavy weights, you get stronger. You adapt to a stimuli. Everything works. And that's why there's so many powerlifting programs out there. This one is very good for beginners. There's a lot of other powerlifting programs out there that I would not suggest you use until you've reached your first plateau. Because once you hit that first plateau, that's when things start to get a little bit more interesting, a little bit more complex, and it's a little less fun, because hitting PRs in the gym feels like winning. You get that drop of dopamine, you feel strong, and you feel wonderful about yourself because you hit a new PR. You get to celebrate. Then the celebrations start to trickle out, and then you start to get to a point where maybe instead of hitting a new PR every month, it's every year. And then it goes from every year to every couple of years. And then the PRs trickle out. And then you'll work for 7 years for 5 pounds on a deadlift. So this program is fun. Lifting is fun. But once you realize that it's the process of going to the gym and getting better and hitting progress is the fun part of powerlifting, that's when you can really have the enjoyment of the sport. So I probably got a little bit too brainy, emotional whatever phrase you want to say, or I got warning, like a old ship ship captain telling you about how it's wonderful to be a sailor, but the mighty storms of the ocean are quite the maiden. But things fun. You should definitely do it and follow this program. I didn't write it. I'm just telling you what it is, and because I want to see more of you guys succeeding and not burning out because you followed a program, you had fun, you fell in love with the process of the sport, and you continue to grow the sport. Because the more the sport grows, the more cool people are in the sport. The more cool people are in the sport, the more cool people you get to meet, hopefully at the top. See you guys there. Patty out.